Okay. I think we're live.
Yep, got 0 though. So wait a second here.
Just the 3 of us. We're still recording though, so it'll still be there.
There we go. All right. So we got some people filtering in. So welcome again back to Market to Market. We're going to talk about different things with mostly real estate and some how to invest your money and do different things outside of e-commerce or your 9 to 5 to try to maximize the amount of money you get back into your pocket. So today we're going to talk about some of the finding properties with short-term and long-term rentals, and then get on into exactly what you do to find that, and then strategies that work with growing your portfolio. So again, welcome Jeff, welcome Makayla.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, and then anybody who has any questions, just drop that in the feed as we're going. We'll answer them as we go. Just whatever app you're on X, on Instagram, or YouTube, just type in a question. We'll answer it as we go.
Good deal.
All right. So Jeff, how do you go about finding? You talked a little bit last time we talked about kind of how you fell into it now when you first started. But if you're looking to, like, if today you were looking to grow your portfolio and you're looking to buy and you thought that there's advantageous to purchase, how do you go about finding properties and scouting them? And then also, are you always on the lookout for new properties?
Well, in 2020, 2021, I mean, I was nonstop looking because of the interest rates and the prices. Nowadays, I've stopped my active search and combination of the increase in rates and prices and in general, we scaled so quickly. We're trying to get some of our processes in place and fixing up the places we have. But in general, when I'm looking for properties, the first thing I would say is for short term, typically, at least in my place, they're not where I live, right? So it's one, identifying a location I want to, for me, it's where do I want the vacation and where do I want to go? And, that's one of the factors. And then looking at the property and analyzing the market in general. Okay, do I think there's stuff there? And then understanding, the market, because as you get places, you're going to need teams there, especially, I'm 6 hours away, so I can't run and fix something. So you want to identify the market and then also make sure you have teams in place. For short term, you need cleaners, you need, really it comes down to having, a good, I don't want to say property management, but, a cleaner and handyman / project folks. Now, Makayla and I go at it a very different way, and then she's usually finding properties that need a boatload of work, whereas I'm looking for properties that, in general were, hey, they're probably, I think the people are getting rid of it maybe because they haven't optimized their ability to maximize their rent. But not necessarily, I'm not looking to gut a place, right? I don't have the team to fully, renovate places. More, it's okay, I see this person. I one of the properties I bought, they gave me the rental numbers. The rental numbers sucked. I found, the first thing I do is I look for, see if I can find where they're renting. Are they on Airbnb and Verbo? And I think I found, this guy's listing on Airbnb, and their cover photo was upside down. Like, like they're probably not maximizing the rent by a blurry cover photo that's upside down. So that's where look, okay, these guys are not maximizing the money. And in some cases, they're just, they may not even be renting it, right? They might just be using it as a second home, and, just trying to see, okay, can we make the numbers work? If they have rental numbers, what can we do to maximize it? If they don't have rental numbers, what do we believe, the rental numbers can be? Do a lot of like market comparison of, okay, let me look in, I always look in Airbnb for similar comps. What is this? What is a comparable 4-bedroom property? 5 minutes from whatever. Usually with vacation rentals, you're usually looking for some type of attraction. Is it a beach? Is it a lake? Is it a mountain? Those are where we tend to focus on, and that's really where I've done the bulk of my research. Is just one, find a location that I personally want to be, identify, make sure I can have some people that I can rely on in that area, and then for me, I just go look on the public listings, like realtor.com, and just look to see for properties that we think I can make it work from a money standpoint. I have a little spreadsheet that I have that I plug in, expected expenses and expected revenue numbers, and you see if I can make it cash flow. And if it can cash flow positive, even if it's a small amount, that's factoring in paying off the the mortgage, right? So if you can cash flow, and pay off the mortgage, and hopefully increase rents as time goes on, and you're appreciating in the price of the property, it could make sense, and that's something we would dive a little deeper into.
Now, is it similar to like with Amazon? Like we look at Keepa charts and we're trying to data. Are you more comfortable pulling the trigger on something that has historic, even if it's miserable results because they have bad photos and stuff, where it already has a track record on Airbnb, or what is the other one, VRBO? Or
Verbo is the other one. Yeah, I mean, usually what I would say is when I'm looking at a property, I don't really care too much how it did in past, assuming I see inefficiencies with their listings. If their listing looks fantastic, it's sort of like when you're looking at a wholesale Amazon account or something, and you look at a listing and it's crap. Okay, I can buy this and I think I can fix it and make it sell more. Whereas if I'm looking at their Airbnb listings and it's perfect, the next thing I look at is the pricing, right? Are they maximizing the pricing? And those are two things that I've had people that have good listings, but they literally they underpriced themselves. I can see, they're priced. We bought this condo, 3-bedroom condo at the beach, and the pricing was I think $350 a night in peak winter. Wow. Sorry, not peak winter, peak summer. We bought the property and we rent it from $800 to $900, $999 a night. They were pricing, and they would be booked by February for summer. And I'm like,
do you think that's an inexperience just in general, or them just wanting to make sure that it's always rented? Or
I think it's
someone to be that low.
I think it's just inexperience and not understanding the market, and just in general, it's one of the things in the beach town that we're at. A lot of people just do weekly rentals, and a lot of people, it's so booked by the time you get to March. So I take the exact opposite approach. I'm like, I don't want to be booked at March. I mean, if you want to book me at for a week at $1,000 a night, essentially, sure. But if not, I'll wait for you when it's May or June and you're trying to plan your summer vacation and everybody else is all booked, and now they can buy from me for $800 a night or whatever.
Selling above the buy box.
So so it's a matter of understanding, evaluating, one, if they have rental data, can we do more, and why can we do more? And if the property, if the listings stink, then I really don't put a lot of reliance on the existing rental data outside of saying, okay, this guy's really not doing much and they're getting that, so we should be able to triple that by making some changes.
That's got to be tough to make projections though on like the year. Like if you buy a property and you're like, all right, what can I make off of this? Like you sometimes have no idea then if the swings are that much different. Like Makayla, your stuff is locked in. Like they get in there, they're at the same price all year mostly until you raise rents, whatever their lease expires. But like, I mean, that's got to be a little nerve wracking buying a property and not knowing like, is that particular one going to be able to hit those numbers? Or how often it's going to be rented out. Like I know I have long-term rental, history, but not short-term. So not knowing how many days a week or what the off season looks like, if things slow down, should you just get people in there, and kind of make $0 because it does something to the algorithm? Like who knows what, all those things do. So have you kind of figured all that out at this point?
Well, what it helps too is, the first property in the market, you're going in a little more blind, right? You have, because even at the existing data I probably should pay for some data but I just use Airbnb, so you can get an idea. Okay, this is what the person's priced and they're booked, but you don't even know what price they booked at, right? So you're just trying to evaluate, and then also like with Airbnb, you look and you say, okay, they're blocked. Are they booked, or are they just going there for the week? So like, some of the data that I use isn't the best, but as you get like, now that I have multiple properties, I know, okay, a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, this far from the mountain, has not netted me, but I can get 60 grand in rent in a year, right? So I know that, or I've done that. So when I'm looking at, another similar one, I already have comps. So that helps. But yeah, I mean, the first house in the market, it's definitely, a crapshoot of, okay, what do we think we can get? Because you're just using estimates, and again, you never know too, because it's, you can see what other ones do in the past, but maybe you don't do as well in the search rankings, and hey, that person is doing something better that you didn't realize. So I always try to make sure that I'm estimating on the low end, so that, hey, I think at least I can do this, and then long as we do that, we're in pretty good shape. And again, you never know.
Do you see rental prices trending upward now that, because the interest rates are so much higher than they were a couple of years back?
It's from because we're doing short term. I think it really depends. What I've noticed is in the beach towns, we tend to seeing some raising prices, because the demand just is really strong there, and it was already a very mature rental environment, I guess, or rental community. So the big push to Airbnbs hasn't as affected that area, whereas in our mountain town, when I first started, there wasn't as many people renting. Also, it was a big area that people were flocking to with COVID. So we definitely had some, I think, stronger periods early on. And now a lot of the town also has switched over, where it used to be a lot of seasonal rentals and a lot of second homes, and just a lot less competition in the market. And now there is more competition, because a lot of people have been, getting Airbnbs. So some of the rates have been going down a little bit. In particular, we saw the biggest with the summer in the mountain town, because especially when people weren't traveling overseas, in 2020, 2021, and even in 2022, people were traveling less, right? Hopping on planes less, and doing vacations they could drive to. So a lot more people were going to to Vermont, is where our mountain home was. Our rental properties are up there, and then in general, you just had a lot of people that, hey, I want to get a property, I want to get a ski house. So they buy it, they use it in the winter, and then they try to Airbnb it in the summer, because they're skiers, right? So there's a lot more competition for us, less demand and more competition in summer, right? Because there's a lot more people that just rent in the summer and use in the winter. So we end up with twice as much competition, and probably half the demand in the summer. So we have a property that probably rents on average about $1,800 a night in winter, and we probably rent it for $250, $300 a night, peak summer. Like, it's just, the swings are massively different depending on the time. I mean, it's a ski on, ski off property with amazing views that loses some of its value as well, when there's nothing to ski on and ski off, and it's not the mountain bike lifts aren't where you can ski on, ski off, so you still got a 15-minute, 10-minute drive to the mountain bike park anyway. So
Makayla, so I mean, yours is obviously tremendously different situation. At one point, you said you were sending out mailings and stuff. So, like, how are you finding properties? How are you qualifying them? you don't have many ocean towns near you. So how are you finding and qualifying leads and properties?
So most of my properties are bought through off market. So whether that be a referral basis from either people that know me and know what I do, friends of people's houses I bought before, neighbors, people that just pass by my job sites. I've had even some of my realtor friends and stuff have sent me off-market things because I use a specific realtor to sell my houses. So his deal basically is like, I know you're going to end up selling the house through me. So I'm not going to charge you anything for it. I'm just going to give you this person's information. And I know whenever you're ready to sell it, that obviously I'm going to be selling it. I'm going to be making much more commission off the back end than obviously the front end. So I do a lot of those. I do a lot of off-market marketing. So like direct to seller, mailers, some cold calling, SMS. I've been doing SMS campaigns lately. I've had probably the most success.
That's straight cold stuff, or are you trying to qualify through lists and like what people are shopping for?
We always pull lists. We pull our own data. A lot of my data actually comes from the county auditor. And we do a lot of tax delinquent, pre-foreclosure, and out of state or like tired landlords. But I think my most successful list is probably the tax delinquent people. I've purchased a few. The one that I just bought that came from my last set of mailers. I think I only mailed out like 110 total. Ended up getting like 3 calls and then ended up purchasing one.
Pretty good.
So, yeah, there's people that send out thousands and never get.
I mean, I was reading something the other day that was talking about just marketing in general, like how email is getting so spammed that it's now switched back over to you get more attention on a paper, snail mail than you do, even putting emojis and all sorts of other stuff in your email. So that's interesting. But that's a pretty decent callback for a flyer.
Yeah, it's usually like 0.1%.
Yeah.
My averages is probably close to like 1%. Whenever I do it, I don't usually do like a whole bunch at one time. So I'll like stagger them out. I'll do like 500 and then I'll wait X amount of weeks and then I'll send out another 500 or I'll send out 300. And then some of them I've been mailing since December of last year, not last year, the year before that. Sorry. So we've been sending them out, and obviously it's a numbers game. So I think it's like 7 touches you have to have for most people in order for them to like reach out and stuff and like remember you and know who you are. So
you're just sending out an email saying, "Look, hey, I want to buy your property," or "Get cash quick."
No, so so when I first started doing mailers, I actually did handwritten notes.
Oh wow!
Literally handwritten notes. I would spend a massive amount of time doing them, and then
style stuff.
Then I ended up doing. I started to get smarter, and I was like, I'm going to write it on a piece of paper, then I'm going to copy it, and it still looks like it's handwritten, and then I sign the bottom of them. So most people have no idea that they're copied because they look handwritten. So I started doing those, and then more recently, I actually had a letterhead and stuff made up, so that way it gives me more like credibility, and people aren't like, why is somebody sending me a handwritten note kind of thing. So I've been kind of testing both of those. And for the most part, it basically just says like about me, my business, and how I've been buying houses in the area and fixing them up. I buy houses at pretty much any condition. It doesn't matter if they have like back taxes on them. Doesn't matter if it's in pre-foreclosure. Like I've worked with many different people, and basically like my call to action is, like I pay cash, I pay fast, and I can close into as little as almost a week now. I think I've got it down to.
Nice.
As long as the title company, so that's where the hindrance is. If I can get the title company to do the title search for me in a reasonable amount of time, I can get it closed in like 7 to 10 days, as long as they are on their game. Most of the time I have lenders already lined up for these deals. So like all I'm waiting on is the title to come back. And then once we have the title come back, then we can obviously move forward and I can schedule the closing and stuff. But just
some of that can be complex
like
though with the titles. I know a lot of times they're relatively easy, but there's a few times, especially if there's like a trust involved or something like that, it can be a massive mess.
Very sticky very fast. I have one tied up in title right now. It has a federal tax lien from not the owner that I'm buying it from, but the owner prior to that owner. So I actually had to get the contact information off of the current seller, and she had a phone number that's no longer active. We have an address and we have an email. And the escrow officer that I always use, she was actually trying to reach out to the parent of this guy because we had no other information. And so she wasn't able to get anything. And so finally we got his email. She found his email off of the old records that she had when she first bought the house off of him. And he did finally just email us back. But it's been, if we didn't do it this way, we were going to have to go through the attorney general's office. And I'd say probably they're about 7-ish weeks out right now, if not 8 weeks. Yeah. Wow. So it's a long time to be tied up. I've had a contract for almost a month, I think now.
Wow. That's pretty wild. So you're actually stuffing envelopes. You're not sending out like a postcard. You're actually putting paper in an envelope.
No, we stuff envelopes. Oh, okay. Yeah, I do mine a certain way. I don't like to give out too much sauce about it.
Yeah.
It probably plays a factor in my open rate and stuff, but it honestly is so market dependent that even if I say exactly how I do things, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to translate in everybody's market. So I have a lender.
You have unclaimed money mailer.
Yeah, out of California, and when I told him I was doing mailers back almost 2 years ago now, he's like, they never worked for my market because he was investing in California. And so I ended up trying it out. I'm glad I did, but it seems like the smaller markets are a lot better for mailers than the bigger markets, just from
it also like it's not the market, it's what you're sending to. Like if you make it,
and the list, the data is very important, just like Amazon. Like obviously and you have to know the data. If the data obviously is not good, there's no sense of sending, because mailers are expensive. You know, you could spend easily 70, 80, 90 cents a mailer just to send them out. If you do postcards, they're a lot less because obviously it's just a tiny little postcard. There's no real weight to it. But I don't do postcards. I might try a round of postcards in the future just to see what my conversion is compared to like actual mailers versus the postcards itself.
It'll be less. I mean, people see the postcard and they immediately think sale, like someone's trying to sell them something.
That's what I think. But then there's some people that swear by postcards. So I'm like, I'll do my own A/B testing.
Now, what about, I get text all the time, like, hey, we're interested in buying your property. Do you do cold texting?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I actually have a campaign going right now.
I'm broken up on my end, or
can you hear me?
Can you guys hear me at all?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear
me and Makayla seem to be fine, so it might be.
I heard his question, so I'm gonna keep rolling with it. But we started doing SMS again, probably 5 or 6 weeks ago. You have to watch with SMS because there's so many laws now and rules and stuff to SMS. So you have to be very, very, very careful about what you text people, like what your opening script is, and make sure that you have opt-out language. There's just so many different things. It can be really risky if you don't want to. I
don't think I've ever got an opt-out. It's just
so that's technically against the law right now.
Okay. I'll have to report to
you have like when you get all the ones from like the websites and stuff, it tells you click this to stop receiving this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big thing. And like the do not call lists and stuff, you got to scrub those lists and stuff, because if not, I've heard of people getting fined like $50,000.
Yeah, they hang up on you right away after you say like, "Hey, I've told you 3 times now. It's off to the click."
You know who I am? Nope. Okay. But no, SMS is cheap though, so that's why a lot of people end up doing it, cold calling and texting. Obviously, mailers, PPL, PPC, mailers are all sort of on the expensive end of things, and like cold calling, SMS, and like for sale by owner and cold emailing. I know people do that too. It's on the cheaper end.
Yeah, they're like, "Are you interested in selling your house?" I'm like, "Yeah," because usually, well, I get it from all the different houses, but when I get it from my actual house, I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to sell my house," but my wife doesn't want to move. But and other time they'll send. I'll get it sometimes for like my beach houses, all kinds of different all the different houses seem to get it, but nobody ever. I'm like, "Sure, what do you?" I'll always ask. And maybe it's in they're not supposed to tell me, but I always say, "Sure, what are you offering?" And they never come back to the number.
Okay, that's like the number one tire kicker answer. So if anybody ever says that to like the people running my campaigns, we don't even entertain it at that point, because like if you're asking me how much I'm going to pay, 9 times out of 10 you're a tire kicker. So we just keep moving.
Okay. There you go.
So if you want them to not answer you, that is the key to success, is saying, or just saying some stupidly absurd number, like say, "Well, Zillow told me it's worth $3 million or something, so I'd like 3.5." That's another one. People will be like, "Well, Zillow told me it's worth this amount, and I want like $100,000 more than that." And I'm like, I can probably guarantee that house is not even worth what the Zillow estimate even says anyway. But okay.
No. That's one of the top complaints with like realtors about why they hate it when people start looking on Zillow, is that the Zestimate thing is wildly off. And it can be. I mean, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But again, like we were talking about the other day, like your appraiser is half responsible for, all the different things that start causing all that. If the house gets appraised that and sells for that, everything else is either going to go up or down based off of that. That happened in our neighborhood. The last house I sold when I moved to Texas is one house sold for like $900,000, a friend of ours' house, and that pushed everybody's prices up. And then mine sold next, and mine was the most expensive in like our section. And then the neighbors were all sending me messages thanking me because their values went up, and now they're considering selling. it's a huge chain reaction.
Mine's I said I'm glad yours are happy. When I have one of the houses that I'm actually getting ready to put on the market. I've been working on it for what feels like forever now. But the neighbor, I think the neighbor's just pissed that the house values are going to go up, because that house is probably going to set a comp, because most of mine do. And I think they're just mad because they're obviously their property taxes.
And that's the thing. And if you don't fight it, which you should fight it every year, whether you think it's worth that or not, but because it'll always go up. It's very rarely going to go down.
Property taxes are so cheap in this city too, so like it's really not that bad. But you know how people are. People get real salty, and their house is ugly looking, so they're probably kind of jealous too, because that house that I bought was literally the ugliest house on that row. And then they actually just tore down the second ugliest house today. They're probably still working on it now. And then the third one is right next to mine, and I'm hoping to buy it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and it works against you too, because prices start going up in the neighborhoods that you're trying to buy in and continue building in as well. I mean, that's what happened with when I worked for Habitat for Humanity. Is like you start building stuff, and then people would slowly start doing things to their house and doing upkeep, and it was this chain reaction. Then all of a sudden, you couldn't get any more properties in those areas, which was fine. That was the whole intent of a lot of it. But you'd see other people that were, investors looking to jump into it and might not do as nice of a job as some of the other people that come in there. But yeah, it makes it tough to continue buying in those spaces. You got to then move on to the next area.
I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth until then.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of houses that are smaller and less expensive, so it's a little bit easier for you to kind of grab some of them and get into it. Where Jeff's looking at things that are 10 times the price of some of yours.
Oh yeah, I could buy a whole large portfolio for one of his.
I don't think all of his
I could buy out a whole town almost.
I guess going into like qualifying, so someone then calls you back and says, hey, the 3 people that call you back, 100 and whatever that you send out, how are you then qualifying leads to be able to say, okay, yeah, I want to buy your house? And if you got 3 back that were, if you got 3 back that were 3 good ones, are you like trying to take on that much at one time, or do you try to stagger them, or how does that all work?
I always take them on. I don't know how to say no when the crusty calls. I must answer. But no, I will end up just talking to them about their property. I obviously have, if it's SMS, then obviously I'm reaching out to them. So like my assistant will take care of like the actual cold outreach, and then he'll put it in my sheet, and then I will do like the warmer, I guess, approach. And then if they're doing mailers and they're calling me, then most of the time they'll tell me like, hey, I own this house at XYZ Street. I go in and I obviously look it up. Most of the places that I end up, like the areas investing in, they're on Google Maps. So I'll go and look it up, see what it looks like on the outside of the house. And I'm checking, obviously, like if it's a tax delinquent list, I'm seeing like how much it is and making sure that those values are going to line up with whatever they're going to offer. So like if they already owe like 50 grand on back taxes and the house is only worth 30, then obviously there's no sense for me to even continue with that conversation. But if everything checks out, I reach out to them. Most of the time I don't even answer the phone because like I get so many spam calls.
Yep.
I hate it. So they'll leave me a last message, and then like I said, I will call them back, and then we'll talk about it. And I'll end up going out there and looking at the house, as long as they don't ask some stupid amount for it. Like if they're going to tell me that it's worth like $100,000 already, and like I know that they're not going to take less than the 100,000, then I'm like, okay, like if you do end up changing your mind on the price or whatever, if you can't sell it, please let me know. I'd love to have the first shot at it. And that's actually happened. I actually bought a house. Was it maybe 2 months ago now? I met the guy originally probably 8 months ago. And I looked at the house and I told him I wanted, what was it? I was going to pay like $37,500 for this house. And he said, my wife said she wants 60 for it. Okay, let me know. I said, I'll be waiting for your phone call. Like 3 months later or 4 months later, I finally get a call from him. And he's like, are you still interested in buying my house? And I should have said, yeah, for like 30,000 now. My price is but I didn't. I wasn't a dick about it. I ended up telling him, I was like, yeah, I will buy it for $37,500, which is what the original price that I told you. And then he drug it out for like a month. And I finally got him to sign the document. I thought I was going to have to go to his house and beat him over the head with a shovel. But finally he got the signature, and then his wife tried to almost back out the day of closing. I literally was in Florida, had my leg fixed. I had all the documents sent to me. I had the lender's money was in the account, like in escrow. I got a call from my escrow officer. It was like, she said, Makayla, she's telling me she can't come today because she has kindergarten registration because she's a school teacher. Well, she's a nurse, sorry, school nurse. And I said, well, didn't she know this ahead of time? We've had this date planned for the last like 4 or 5 days. And she's like, yeah. She's like, do you want to call her and talk to her? So I ended up calling her. Obviously she was at work. I'm like, hey, I said, I heard that you have some plans today. I said, I cannot back out of this deal right now. I said, I have a loan already. The lender already has the money in the account. Like it's do or die time. Like we have to close on this today. And then I just let it go and hung the phone. And then I went on Google and I looked at the registration, the timelines for the kindergarten registration, and it wasn't even that day. So I texted my escrow officer and was like, there is no kindergarten registration today. I said, this is much BS. And so I told her, I said, she does not want to find out what's going to happen if she doesn't close today. So, because I will send a cease and desist letter. I will not cease and desist letter. I will send her a letter basically saying that I will be suing her for specific performance. Because we have a contract already. I already have the loan taken out. Like it is in the account. Obviously, I don't have it officially, but like my lender has the money there. Like we're not backing out now. So She finally called me back and I talked her through it. She thought that, I don't know what she thought was going on, but she said something about signing a contract and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, well, your escrow officer told me that you had a contract that is something that I have to sign. I'm like, no, you just have to sign the Alta statement. It's really not that hard. It's pretty simple. I said, your documents are only like 2 pages. Mine is like 15. I said, it'll take you 2 seconds to do. I promise. There's no like weird crap going on. So she finally was good to go. She signed. I went to the UPS store, got my thing notarized, and then went to the FedEx store and sent it out, and we were all good. But she tried to back out, and I'm like, not today. Not today, sir.
Do you ever ask these people whether you go through it or they call you and are interested, but it doesn't work out? Do you ever ask them if they like know other people that might be in a similar situation that would be looking to sell their property?
Yeah, I've had that happen. I've had people who've sold me houses, and they're like 5 months later, whatever, down the road, they'll be like, hey, are you still buying houses? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, I know somebody. I got a friend of mine who needs to sell their house. And like I'd say at least 70% of my leads nowadays are referral based, because when you work in like a niche market like I do, people know who I am. And so if they're ready to sell a house, most of these people kind of like, okay, like I know she bought this house off this person, or this person is friends with her or whatever. And then they end up selling it to me. But
nice.
It's pretty cheap marketing when it comes to referral basis. And then I got a van on.
I always ask the question, because usually if they're talking to you, they're interested in some level that they probably know other people that might be with anything. I mean, whether it's houses or you're selling, really anything, door to door, coffee, it doesn't matter. I always ask if they know somebody else, and it works out well.
Yeah, I pay them some money too. If I said, if you bring me a lead and I close on it and I actually buy it, I'll give you $100 cash.
Nice.
That seems cheap, but listen, $100 is $100. They love it.
Yeah.
I give them a $100 bill and they are more than happy.
And send them like Christmas thank you cards later, and put them on that mailing.
I send them a thank you card and I give them $100 cash. And I'm like, if you know anybody else, I've got another Chris Benjamin waiting for you.
Just keep sending them our way.
So keep sending my way. I'll take them.
Do you don't use a realtor for any of yours, or that you're all just sort of referrals and direct mailing?
I'd say about 80. It changes. Sometimes I say 70-30. Sometimes I say 80-20. Kind of just depends on the time of year. But I do have like MLS deals too. Like I've bought 3 or 4 foreclosures online onto the MLS. I just picked one up maybe 2 weeks ago now on the MLS.
Are you daily looking through this stuff? Like, are you spending every day? You're going and like just like you source on Amazon.
Alerts. I got alerts for certain zip codes. So as soon as one comes up, it gets posted. 9 times out of 10, I get it to my phone, and I'm usually on my phone. So then I see it before the photo even generates.
Yep.
And I'm like, I need to see this. I send this to my realtor. He's like, Makayla, the photos aren't even yet. I'm like, but it's actually $30,000.
I mean, the cash deals, they go so fast that you have to act if they get publicly listed.
No, you got to strike while the iron's hot. People like to think way too much, but it's probably because I bought 45 units at this point. But I just strike when the iron's hot. So like if I see something that's even potentially going to be a good deal, I put the request in to get a showing, and I'm usually within the day or the next day max of seeing it. So I usually have it. If I end up buying it, I have it under contract within 24 to 48 hours. I don't take like 2 hours to decide.
In 2018, like I was looking for a house the first time I moved down to Texas, and I'd find the realtor would say like find 10 properties because like the night before. And she's like, and we'll go and schedule them. She's like, and then by that day, 5 of them were already sold. And they could have been stuff that was like just listed on the market. And it just like, depending on what's happening, what's going on, they go so fast. And those weren't even like, properties that were, they were just going to be, someone's going to live in them. They weren't something that was an investment property. But they get snatched up so quick depending on what the market is. But yeah, especially if there's something where someone can make some money. I know like if Jeff saw any property at all in the town he lives in go for $37,000, he wouldn't even look at it. He would just buy it.
Buy now.
Yeah, that's wild. So
Yeah,
Jeff, you were talking about like offer strategies and different things when you get to the point where you're going to make purchases. Like what are kind of your strategies when you look at that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, looks like, I've only purchased, through sort of, looking through scouring the MLS, finding deals, or finding items, and then you're going through that. So items, I'm so used to talking Amazon, finding houses, and submitting offer that way. So little different approach than what sounds like 70-80% of how Makayla's finding her stuff. And yeah, I mean, the big thing that I have is a lot of our properties, we aren't paying cash. We are going through the traditional, mortgage, process. And, the problem that I started to run into is I was competing against the cash offer folks all the time.
Yeah.
So
It's
that,
tough.
we'd come in at the same price and then, lose out. So, and again, at the end of the day, you have to figure out, okay, well, what are you willing to pay? Then you want to try to figure out how you can minimize that without, you can put an escalating offer in there, right? And we did that a bunch, and we used to sort of have like, we'd put, hey, our offer will escalate this amount if we're going against a competing bank loan offer, and it's going to be a higher amount if it's going against the cash offer or whatever, just because we kept losing. Like, hey, you got you're the same price, but hey, this person's cash, we'd rather close with them. So so we'd put in an escalator for different prices for the cash. But it's also got to be careful because if you put in, say, 400 offer, but we'll go up to 450, and then they see it and they see the escalating offer, but there's nobody, they're like, damn, that guy will go up to 450, but we're only getting 405. How do we get them up? So you got to be very careful with how you.
I love when they do that. I love when my buyers have escalation clauses because we do anything in our power to get all the way up to the top. We'll have open houses, and then my realtor will start, pestering the realtors who had showings, like, hey, it's already gone over ask, like, put your best offer, your highest invested. And 9 times out of 10 they would go all the way up.
Yep. So try to figure out how to not let the seller max you out to your escalation clause. So I mean, it was just crazy. Again, I only purchased one property. I like to try to time these things so they're in peak Q4 of Amazon to make my life, even more challenging. But I closed on a property in December, but that was the first one I closed in a few years. And I mean, it was just, you were going against, when I first started, there wasn't that, the first property we bought in 2020, it had sat on the market for like 5 or 7 years, something like that. But then it quickly, the first 2 properties we bought in 2020, it was definitely a slower starting to heat up. And then, those 2 sort of proved the concept, and we started to, push a little bit harder in 2021. And that's when, the next, what it was, okay, you now got 10 offers and, properties were, most of them were going within a week or 2, and just, really trying to, be strategic of how much you wanted to spend, and make sure you could make it work. And certainly was easier to make it work when you could lock in a mortgage at under 3%.
Well, it's tough too, depending on your type of mortgage, if you have to get an inspection versus people waiving inspections, because no one selling, if they have multiple offers, wants to deal with a hiccup at that stage. So you have, and that's how we sold ours. It was no inspection. I mean, the house, it was I don't know, 50 years old, and it was a $700,000 house that they bought with no inspection. And again, we disclosed everything, but like it's a risk, and people can do that if they have certain types of loans or paying all cash.
Starting to get a bit crazy, but market's slowing down a little bit, but it's still right now, because everybody's so locked in low rates, at least in the markets we're looking at, still things still going fast, because there's just not much that pops on the market, because nobody wants to go from a 3.25% rate to a 7% rate or 6.5%, whatever it is. So still not a lot hopping on the market. And then
target the military. They have to move. And
yeah. And obviously I think that's why
a lot of VA loans.
The alternate methods of doing finding the off-market deals are a way to go, and probably something I need to look into a little bit more. I know one of my buddies that has a few Airbnbs like an hour north of where we are in Vermont, and I think they got a couple of them through sort of off market, doing that same thing, finding on Craigslist, mailers, just finding other ways to find properties so that they're not competing with 15 offers.
Yeah.
And they still exist in the vacation areas as well. It's just a matter of, figuring it out.
Makayla, you said, I think you said it, you did did you do a seller finance ones before? Are they at like a competitive percentage rating as like if you got it from a bank, or can you negotiate that differently?
It ended up being 6%, which is better than by a long mile what I usually get because I'm DS loans, so investor-based loans. So it's from I'd say my average right now is probably like 8%. So I think my lowest right now is the one that I just closed on. My refinance was that last week or the week before that. It was like 7.25. So it's nice to see the refinance rate. But yeah, because I do 75% cash out. It's not like a rate and term.
Oh, okay.
I do a cash out, so it's obviously higher than the rate and term, and then obviously being an investor-based loan, it's even higher than a conventional loan. So I never see like 6% or whatever. It's always like 1% higher.
But I guess you don't really care what the percentage is as long as the numbers work that you're going to be profitable on the
yeah, as long as it cash flows my $250 a month. I know that in the end it's going to hopefully come down at some point. And then that way, if it makes money now, it's really going to make money when, we hit 6s or 5s. Just a matter of just waiting and being patient.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty. If you can make it work in, this rate, numbers will do a little better with some lower rates.
Well, it's funny. It's like we talk about like 8 being high. I know like when my parents bought their first house, it was like 18% or something in the 80s.
Those rates are nuts.
It was so much higher, but now the houses were much less expensive comparatively to what people earn. So it was a different world then. But 8 still, significantly different than I think my last. I'm not paying 8 now with mine, but I think it was like 2.5 or something from what we moved from to, and like literally the weeks that we're like waiting to settle, we're like watching the numbers go up. We're like, no, like slow down. I think I can't remember what it is. It was 4.5 or 5 or something like that. We're at.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you factor in again back in 2020, a house that you get for about at least the place we were buying in Vermont, get for $500K is probably going for $900K now. You could get that for 2.75% if you're not like, if you have decent credit, and investor loan is probably more like 3.25 unless you're paying for points. And now $900K and between 6 and 7%. I mean, what is that? That's got I don't know the math on it, but it probably like triples the payment because you've doubled the value plus the interest. So it's a whole different game.
My first property was a duplex, and I bought it for the reason of like I was 21 or something like that when I bought it, and I didn't have enough money to I'd have enough money on paper to make it look like I could afford to pay all the things. So what I ended up doing is I just got the tenant to sign a lease that then showed his verified income, which then boosted up what my numbers would be, and they gave it to me on that. And again, because it was like 2006 or 2005, whatever it was, they it was like
giving everybody loans back then.
Oh, it was 0%. I think I put $500 down to hold the house, and then that got me to the settlement table, and they gave me a house. There was 0% down. It was like then they gave me 2 mortgages for
interest only loans.
The first one was like 2.5% or something, and the second one was like, I don't know, it was 10 or something, but and then refinanced that and got that one down. But yeah, it was like, it was crazy. And then I think that loan sold like 4 times before I made the first payment.
Yeah, yep.
I had to like message them because I was like, I don't know if this is legit or if I'm getting like
yeah.
Like,
make sure I'm sending the payment to the right people.
And then I didn't know anything. I had a lawyer go with me to the table because I didn't know anything about buying properties. My parents hadn't bought a property in a long time, so and he actually ended up costing me money. He found that my realtor forgot to put her commission in the papers. so she was thanking him, but yeah, he actually cost me money on that one. But yeah,
I'm guessing the realtor would have figured it out at some point and tried to get it from you.
Yeah, I mean, she was nice. Yeah. Retta was her name, but she was great. Yeah, but it was like one of those ones that it was in Philly. There was a house next to it that I knew someone who was going to be buying that house next to it and going to be renovating it because it was like, I don't know if it was just an abandoned house, no windows, nothing. So I knew that the property value was going to go up no matter what, and that rental was going to be good because they're going to be renovating this ugly house next door it was tough to rent out. It worked out really well. It's rented out solid. I don't think it really had much vacancy in it for the 10, 12 years that I owned it. So it was awesome.
Cool.
But yeah, it's something that, like, if anybody's listening to this that looks at it like, well, I don't necessarily have the money to go buy, these houses and flip them and stuff. Like, you can do things where if you live in portions of it, you can get different types of loans, and you can, look at duplex options, then have rental income while you're still living in your own home, and then eventually refinance that and move into a different house and then have that and rent out both sides of that. There's a lot of options you can do. And I'd say, like, talk to your realtor, talk to, loan officers. They'll talk to you all day. They want nothing more than to sell you stuff. So you don't have to pay that. It's not like an accountant where you got to pay to talk to them. They're going to talk to you and want to sell you stuff.
Yep.
So, ask questions when you go with like good questions, and then make sure you remember what they are. But it's confusing, especially the first time you're going into this stuff. So ask the people who deal with it every day. And then like the realtors, like Makayla, you were saying, there's like, they make more money on like the back end of it because the property's worth more, and when they go to sell it. And like I had them that they said that when we sold it, they were going to do it at like no cost or for like 1% or something like that. As long as we committed to the next one we buy through them type thing. So you can work out all sorts of deals depending on what they're doing. They're going to work harder if they get paid more. So that's always key.
Yeah.
So Makayla, you were saying that you're just kind of looking through the MLS and the realtor, like all the different stuff to find properties and then doing the mailers. Jeff, you said you're looking on the Verbo and Airbnb. Now, are you using any kind of softwares and stuff to either find things or to manage properties once you have found them?
Yeah, I mean, we use, for the e-com folks, I'm sure that they utilize this as well, but we use a repricer to price our products as we're, on the market, trying to come up with our daily rates. So in particular, especially because, we have very seasonal properties, especially, the shore, it's, July and August is, tenfold what we'll get in January, and even friggin' November through April is very slow. So we set up sort of seasonal repricing mins and maxes as you would do same thing pricing products, right? What's the lowest we'd go, what's the max, add some variables of charging more for a weekend, less for weekdays, add some things about how like if you have a gap, right? If you have a, if we have a booking Friday through Monday, 2 of those, that midweek, we're going to take less just to get somebody in there because we know, forget even that. Like if we have a one night open, we're going to rent that one night much cheaper because we know we have a very limited audience for it. So just having the software know the seasonality well, the software knows the seasonality, and then we plug in different, you know, mins and maxes based off the month of the year or this, you know, the season. And then, you know, the software is looking at the market, trying to understand the market demands, and tries to price you competitively. You know, and we'll raise the price up and raise the price down. You know, you can also set up, you know, different rules for, you know, as you get closer to the booking date. You know, as you get closer, the price might drop, depending again on the demand, but lots of times as you get closer, the price will drop if you're still not booked. And sort of like we also put in, hey, 6 months out, we'll put in a 4 or 5 night minimum requirement, trying to get the bigger bookings, you know. And then as we get closer, okay, well, now we're down to 3 days, 2 days, you know, just, you know, different time periods, you know, changing our standards. And that way it's just sort of set it and forget it, but we're maximizing our pricing, which is, you know, when I talked about analyzing some of the properties, that's some of the stuff that I would look at is like, okay, this guy just charges $350 all year round. You know, they're not maximizing because at some points they're too high. They're too high in the off season and they're way too low in season. And that's where we try to maximize our value by utilizing a repricing, you know, repricing tool for setting our prices for the, you know, on the different platforms.
Makayla, how are you pricing your properties when you get them? Is your realtor doing that? Or do you like rent it through your realtor and have your realtor handle everything, or how does that work to get people in for you?
No, my realtor just sits there and is pretty and then collects his check. I do everything. I mean, I have a assistant now who helps me with property management in-house. But I still like lead a lot of these things. So like the houses that 95% of the houses I already know upon me buying them what I'm going to be asking for rent, because I already have houses in that area already. And sometimes I'll surprise myself. Like I know in a certain area that I invest in, like 4 bedrooms can get me like $1,300 or something. And then this year I just rented one out for $1,350. So like things are trending up, thankfully. But for the most part, I kind of already know just based off of previous data. And I like to use Facebook Marketplace because there's not really a whole lot of data when it comes to the places that I invest in, because I'm not in a major metropolitan area. So it's not like there's, 100 listings for this specific, like a 3-bedroom house in this area. It's like there may be 3 houses for rent in the entire town or city. And so I've got to figure out, when I first started, obviously it was a lot harder because I did ask my realtor about it, because he does have rentals too. And he'd be like, yeah, you could probably get like $1,000 out of a 3-bedroom house. And I'm like, okay. So I went into it thinking, I was going to get $1,000 out of it. And I turned around and got it rented for $1,200. Nice. I provide nice houses, and there's a lot of houses in my area that aren't that nice. And there's a lot of people who want to spend a little bit more to have a nicer product. Like they can spend $800 a month on a house, but there's probably amount of issues. Like you get what you pay for. So they know, like, if they get a house off me, everything's pretty much new. So the obviously the amount of problems they're going to have is going to be a lot smaller.
Okay. Are there any questions from the group here? If everybody's kind of sitting in there to kind of ask, that we can drop in and Makayla, myself, or Jeff can answer. If you have them, probably a good time to ask. And then I'll ask Jeff one more question here. So on, you mentioned before on the softwares that like one was for managing cleaners, or is that just for all work that needs to be done on the properties, or is it just for cleaners, or how does that all work?
Yeah, we have a software that we use. It's called Turno. I think it's called Turno. They change their names all the time, but that sort of syncs up with the listing platforms, and it what's the word I'm looking for? It allows our cleaners to see a booking. So as soon as it gets booked, the cleaners are notified. Instead we used to like create a spreadsheet and share it with them and update them, and then God forbid I actually miss one, and then so a guest shows up and the place hasn't been cleaned. So now they get notified, and they can just log on. They can see the calendar. It doesn't show pricing or names or anything, but it just shows, hey, this place is booked, and and then they utilize it then they can assign their cleaners, to it. So they have their cleaners on the platform. They assign the cleaners to it. And we don't use it to the full capabilities, but you can build in like, cleaning checklist, and give it to the cleaners. Hey, make sure you wipe the floor. Did you do this? There's places for pictures. So, we have hot tubs at a bunch of places, take a picture of the hot tub showing that it's clean and stuff. So we do a lot of that off of Turno, but it does have, a lot of other capabilities that we're not fully utilizing it. It even has like stocking your inventory. So like, we provide paper towels and, hand soap and dish soap and stuff like that. So you have where the cleaners can manage how much is in there and then can sort of alert, okay, it's time to reorder and stuff. So it's pretty cool. We probably don't use it. We definitely don't use it to its full functionality, but it at least, allows the cleaners to, fully be aware of what's going on to try to avoid the, oh crap, a guest is there and the place hasn't been cleaned.
Now, do you have to have like a locked closet somewhere for something for like toilet paper,
yes,
the K-pots and all that stuff?
Yeah, usually what we have in each property is what we call an owner's closet, especially ones we visit more, which we might put our stuff, especially, hey, we have a ski home, right? So like, hey, we'll throw the skis in there and we'll lock it up. And then there's another closet for the cleaners. And that's where they'll keep, excess toilet paper, soap, cleaning supplies, stuff like that they can then open when they get there and access it.
Nice.
Extra sheets, linens, that type of stuff. At least for the properties that we provide linens.
What do you mean that you provide linens?
My phone never stops ringing.
Yeah, no, I mean, in the beach properties, we don't provide linens, which is, a shock for some of the folks that rent from us, even though it's, we have it like 7 different places now, including they have to agree to it when they book, that, they understand there's not linens. Because again, it is a unique situation, especially for somebody that's booking an Airbnb or Vrbo property, they're expecting linens. But, in the beach towns in that we're at, it's just not common, and allows us to turn over the property a hell of a lot quicker. So we don't provide it. And we give them, as soon as they book, we have a welcome message that says, hey, here's just a reminder, you agreed to that we don't have linens. And, here's some recommendations if you want to rent, rent linens. Because there's a lot of, because of the fact that none of these properties have it, there's a lot of like linen services that you can.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't remember ever having to deal with that when we stayed at places, but
yeah, no, it's nuts. I admittedly I hated it, and I've tried to find some service providers to do it, and our Vermont properties all are provide the linens, but our cleaner, there's no we love our cleaners, and they're like, no, we're not doing your linens. It's just not it's not what we do. So it's like, I'm sure we could find somebody else, but well, I shouldn't say sure, because I know we did a lot of research and had trouble finding folks. So. But we've definitely had people that show up and are like, why is there no sheets on the beds? And we're like, you didn't read, did you?
Can you do something where you charge them extra if they use your sheets?
It's such a battle with Airbnb.
You have like something there where they can pull from?
Well, one, we don't keep them there, right? And then 2, you have, if it happens to be a place that we do have linens and we could actually get them, it's just like, it's a pain. And it's the challenge with being on platforms, right? We do some off booking, but a lot of our booking is on Airbnb and Vrbo, and you're trying to balance the fact that you don't want to put up with their shit, essentially. Like, if they didn't read, that's not our fault. Yeah. But guess what happens? It's 1-star review, and and again, sometimes we can get them removed, but other times it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that they didn't read. They were unhappy you didn't have linen, so they're going to leave you a 1-star review. And as long as they don't like curse you out or do some inappropriate verbiage, it can be very difficult to get it removed. So you try to balance that of telling them whatchamacallit, too bad, like and I mean, we've given money to go buy stuff. I've shipped stuff from like Walmart for them. one time I had, and now this guest booked, and there was a nonstop pain in the butt of like, hey, why don't you have linen? And they knew beforehand. I said, and I think we even offered them to cancel, but they still came, and they were, I was like, look, actually, no, what did I eventually agreed? I was like, I will give you linens. We will purchase you linens. My only ask is that you donate them after you leave. I don't want my people to deal with it. You don't want to take them. I'm going to buy these for you. You find some homeless shelter, or you find somewhere that you can donate these to so they don't go to waste. And guess what was still in the property when he checked out, So, and then he started to
didn't read the first time. What makes you think they're going to read the second time?
Yeah. So, and then, he started threatening like a negative review, but the good thing was he was like a host himself, which is always the worst people to rent to because they have all the answers, and especially because he provides linen. So how dare I not provide linen? So, but I kindly reminded him that I can also provide my honest feedback about the stay. So you're welcome to leave your honest review, and I will do the same. And thankfully he went off and didn't leave a review or whatever, but because he checked out, and what it was, he checked out and they started trying to get a refund, and that was like, nope, we're not giving you a refund, sorry, we already gave you the linen, you didn't donate, and I forget what his list of complaints were, but it's
all right,
it's a pain.
We're going to wrap this up. I know, as always, we mentioned that Makayla is always looking for additional people to fund her ventures, and you do get money from it, a 15% annualized return. So you can reach out to her at the REI Makayla _. Generally on Instagram is the best way to reach her. We've already had some people from the Amazon community reach out to her, and I think they're looking to even fund stuff immediately. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, if you don't actually want to buy houses and deal with the renters and the linens and piles of feces and all the other things, give Makayla her money. She'll give you more money back. So anyway, if you want to reach out to her, REI Makayla _, and then we'll probably see you all in a couple weeks here. We'll do this again.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.